Hello and welcome to our four-part ISMA Certified Stress Management series, proudly delivered as part of the Phase 2 of Farmwell Hub, funded by the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine. And whether you're on a farm supporting someone who is, or simply interested in looking after your well-being, you're in the right place. This series is all about helping you understand what stress really is, learn how it shows up in our bodies, thinking and behaviour, identify your own stress triggers, and build simple, practical ways to manage stress and build resilience. We know that farming life is full on, long hours, unpredictable weather, isolation, finances, to name but a few. This training is grounded in real life, not textbook, and that's why we're so thrilled to introduce your trainer for this series, Finola Colgan. A veteran in rural mental health and stress management, Finola's warmth, wisdom and practical tools will guide you through each session. She has a brilliant way of breaking down big concepts into relatable, non-nonsense advice that actually works. So each of the four sessions are approximately 30 minutes and you can catch them live or watch back anytime on Farmwell Hub website on www.farmwellhub.com. So whether you're tuning in at home, during a break or from the yard, we hope these sessions give you a few valuable takeaways and a bit of headspace. Thanks again for being here, and now let's dive in.
Okay, thanks very much, Anne-Marie. I nearly do not recognize myself in there, but yeah, I'm a veteran in terms of being married to a farmer or having a farmer for a husband. And I think sometimes he wonders, does he actually have a wife at all? Because I seem to spend more time off farm, but I'm always there and ready and I suppose that's part of our process here and our message, that farming is not a solo effort, it's very much family orientated and depends on family support from time to time. So our program, while we're focusing on farming and the stresses within farming, it's also about expanding it out to other agricultural and rural people as well as farm families. So I'm delighted to be involved yet again with the Farmwell Hub and delighted that the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine has seen the value of what we did in phase 1 and to give us the opportunity to come along and develop it more based on our feedback. So basically our message here with you today is that prioritizing your well-being is very important. So to outline what you can expect over the next half hour or so, but also over the next number of sessions, we'd like to remind you that when you go onto the Farmwell Hub setting, we have relevant to this presentation, we have a stress questionnaire. Now, this is personal to you. We would encourage you to take it and do your assessment because there's feedback on it. How do you identify stress? And then we're giving 10 top stress busting tips, but also to be able to say that on a regular basis, the Farmwell Hub on their website will be offering tips on a regular basis as well. So to kind of tune into that as well from time to time. And so when we're talking about well-being and stress, what are we talking about? So we're taking a holistic approach that goes way beyond physical health or productivity, because really it's about creating sustainable, supportive environment for you. So how will we go about this? So we have two sessions, like we have two focuses in over the next 4 weeks: well-being, exercise and good general fitness, a healthy balanced diet, healthy weight for your age and height, not smoking or taking recreational drugs, and we look at them as well, good quality sleep, review like about your caffeine and alcohol intake, non-competitive activities, and we look at that in relation to our personality type. And then, do you give your time to yourself for relaxation, not just with yourself, but with your loved ones? And then we're going to look at resilience, and it's important to have hope, optimism. Again, we're going to, these are going to be intermixed as we go along in the sessions. Emotional awareness, which is the key to good communication. Control, like how do you care for yourself? How do you manage yourself? Social support, do you feel isolated? Do you feel lonely? Sense of humor, a good laugh, we all know can be invaluable. self-belief, your mindset, and then ability to problem solve. And we do know that farmers are great problem solvers, absolutely great problem solvers. But the question is, and why we're focusing on this presentation, is do you problem solve for yourself, your own health, your own well-being? And that's the key to this presentation. So, where do we start? A lot of definitions about stress. There's as many definitions as there are books. So the one we like is, and in relation to this evidence-based program that we're delivering from the ISMA in the UK, and basically the adverse reaction a person has to excessive pressure or other types of demands placed upon them. And when we look at stress, and this is what we're going to explore with you, because it's important that we recognize stress, and because it can lead, when we recognize stress and we manage it, it can lead to positive change, not just for you, but also for your family. Stress in farming, and Anne-Marie has already acknowledged it, farming is demanding. It's well established. It's also about managing pressures from unpredictable and demanding conditions. We know the weather. There's a lot of uncertainty going from season to season. Market fluctuations, the cost of resources, the cost of supplies, maintenance of farm equipment, and that. And these pressures can actually build up, and we will look at pressure in more detail in a moment. There's also like financial strain, that can be key, but that's key for any of us, whether we're farming or not. The pressure to maintain profitability, because farming is a business, it's a profession, and it has to be sustainable as well. But one issue that often comes up under stress is the whole idea of isolation. And again, we know many farmers working long hours in rural areas with limited resources can intensify their own emotions and that. But I'd like to challenge that idea of isolation. And I challenge it on the basis of conversations I've had with farmers in my community. Because farmers can find strength and clarity in solitude. However, it is nonetheless important to recognise prolonged isolation without meaningful connection. It can take its toll. It's not the quiet that is harmful, it's the absence of support when it's needed most. And this was nicely summed up for me by a neighbour, a dairy farmer. We were chatting about it. And he once expressed to me there, we were chatting about it, he said, Finola, I love the quiet of the fields. I like looking at my animals. I like look at the land. But it's where I think best, time. We all like time for ourselves. However, there are times I need someone to talk to when things get tough or get rough, as the case may be. So in essence, solitude can be a sanctuary, but connection is a necessity. So what we're saying in our program this afternoon, if the silence starts to make you feel uncomfortable, that is in fact your cue to reach out and seek support. And as you saw there earlier on, we have included tips for managing stress, and also to visit the Farmwell Hub. So when we talk about pressure, what are we talking about? It's that which arises when the pressure placed upon an individual exceeds the capacity of that individual to cope. It's pressure. And but one way, and myself and Anne-Marie were talking about it, we came up with the idea, if you were to look at a gate on your farm going through a field, a heavy farm gate, it's strong, built to last, and it holds firm through wind and weather, perhaps even through Storm Owen. However, over time, the latch starts to strain, hinges creak, maybe the paint wears off, not because the gate is weak, but because the pressure is constant. So if you come along and oil that gate, tighten the bolts, and get a coat of paint, what have you done? You didn't have to replace the gate. The gate did not need replacing, it just needed care. So the question is, are you like that gate? Are we all like that gate? Pressure can mean we're carrying something, holding onto something, some issues, some concerns, some worries that might need adjusting. So by sharing or simply acknowledging the situation can make all the difference. So just take a moment to reflect. What is the pressure you are holding onto right now? What would it look like to oil the hinges even just a little? And we hope this program is part of that oiling process for you and as a participant on the program. So, stress and pressure, we look at them. So, headaches, migraine, um, high blood pressure, stomach upsets, muscle tension, loss of confidence. Clearly, I'm on a farm and you're hearing that dog barking in the background. Uh, the postman has just arrived. Poor sleep, insomnia, irritability, mood swings, anxiety, and depression. Um, so, it can put a lot of demands on us. It can affect our health physically, mentally, and indeed, like if we're under stress, we might want to communicate. And when our follow-up session is going to be more detailed on well-being, on our nutrition, on our good habits, and all of that. On the other hand, when we talk about pressure, and it can be linked in with stress as well. When we're under stress, it can be a motivating factor to get something done. Um, we can get excited, enthusiastic about what we're doing. We can respond as zest for life. We can feel optimistic and energized. As I said earlier on, we can increase performance, impetus to achieve success, boost inner potential. And you know what? It can also be creative um, as well to, what can I do? And we're going to look at personality types in a moment. And it'll be nice to be able to link those, like how stress can impact on us, how pressure can impact on us. So it's the first thing you'll do if you've got a problem, if the tractor isn't working, if an animal isn't responding to treatment, you look and you've identified the signs of stress. So what do they look like? Psychological and emotional signs. So we're going to take them one by one. Poor concentration, feeling out of control, tearful, irritable, anger, guilt, mood swings, not interested, leave me alone, I'm grand, forgetful. Sometimes we'll say, I don't remember where I let the keys down, and then we begin to God, is dementia setting in? It's a common thing. We lose concentration, low confidence, anxiety. Depression can set in when we feel we're not in control, and we can lose heart, and maybe poor decisions, because when we're under stress and our emotions are high and we're uncertain of our territory, we can make poor decisions. So when stress goes unspoken or unsupported, it does not just stay in the mind. It starts to shape how we think, as you can see there, how we feel and how we act. Think, feel, and act. So if we think positive, we act positive and we feel good. But if our thoughts are negative, it's the reverse. Poor concentration, mood swings, low confidence, and forgetfulness are not a sign of weakness. And that's important to remember, that they're warning signals that there's an overload on the mind and body. It's a warning sign. It's like your traffic light system, or a light comes up in your tractor, warning you're out of diesel or there's something wrong. And we don't tend to ignore those warning signs. And if we do it at our peril. For farmers, this can mean feeling out of control, making poor decisions, or withdrawing emotionally. When these signs build up, they can lead to anxiety, depression, and a sense of isolation. And isolation is different from loneliness. Recognizing and becoming aware of these signs can protect your well-being before the weight becomes too much and feelings of not being able to cope creep in on you. Noticing these signs early is not about saying you're sick. It's about looking after yourself before things become too difficult. And then when we look at physical signs, what are we looking at? We're looking at muscle tension, frequent colds, skin problems, tiredness, headaches, indigestion, irritable bowel syndrome, heartburn, weight loss or gain, high blood pressure, heart problems. Like, there's quite a lot in that list there for sure. And farming takes a toll, not just on your body, but on your whole well-being. Because you're physically active, there's all the points we've just been making. So if you're feeling worn out, tired, getting sick more often, and we know farmers don't take time out to get sick. They just keep going, don't they? are noticing change like headaches, stomach trouble, or weight loss or gain, it could be your body's way of saying, I need a break. Maybe I need to go to see a doctor. We bring in the vet pretty quick, don't we? Because our animals are part of our economic value in farming, let it be sheep, horses, cattle, whatever the animal is. And we bring out the vet because we want our animals, number one, to be healthy and well and to be looked after, but also their economic value as well. So these signs do not mean you're weak again. Rather, it's time to look after yourself. And like just like you would care for your land or livestock, or indeed farm machinery. So keep that in mind. And then the third area, behavioral signs. So, no time for relaxation, accidents, maybe workaholic. And sometimes, like people talk about being a workaholic, sometimes in a farm, and the farmer is a workaholic because he has to get through so much and to keep going. And just being aware of that. So like poor time management. Sometimes farmers can be criticized, oh, you don't manage your time. But come and live in a farm 24 hours and do a 24/7 week. You know that time management cannot be like let's say like Dolly Parton, 9 to 5. Like your farming isn't and doesn't work like that. But what's important with time management is that at some point in that process of your time and how you manage your time to give time to yourself. Part of the behavioral signs might be changing appearance, not, kind of being careless about your appearance, um, getting organized for the day, maybe, not bothering to shave as frequently as you do, little things like that. Relationship problems, part and parcel of life, unfortunately, but, once you're dealing with people, you can have relationship problems. So increase like in maybe like alcohol or smoking. When farming life gets particularly demanding, it can show up actually in how we behave. So if you're working particularly hard, all the hours God gives you, as we say, missing regular meals, rest periods, feeling distant from others, or turning more to drink or smoking, it might be your mind's way of saying, I'm under pressure. And it's about being aware of that. And Anne-Marie will be looking at this in more detail at our next session. But we're keen to emphasize in our presentation here, these warning signs do not imply you're failing. Because sometimes we think because things aren't going right, am I failing? And it's a very negative word. In fact, such changes in behavior indicate that you're pushing yourself too hard. Just be aware of that. Ask yourself, am I pushing myself too hard? And you might be the person to recognize that in somebody else. You're going too hard. You're burning the candle at both ends. But recognize it for yourself. And it's time to take stock when you're beginning to feel pressure, like you would again with a worn out machine, or think about the gate we talked about, or a field that's been overworked. You'll give time to rest, so that it can renew itself. Be aware of the red flags and see them as positive triggers to seek help and support, not a sign of negative. So clearly, like reaching for alcohol or smoking and any other drugs might feel like relief, but it can be temporary. But in the long run, not so. It's more beneficial to ask what lies underneath the behavioral change. What do I need to get some help in? I'm just wondering, Anne-Marie, would you like to just comment on that in general, those three areas?
Yeah, Finola, thanks. It's a really great insight into the three areas. Like you said, I'll be touching in more depth onto the practical side of. I think you're going to do a little bit of the solution focus as well. In the next session, I'll be focusing more on the lifestyle stuff around,
Yeah.
the substance misuse.
So, so identifying signs of stress, same as you will identify your machinery under pressure, animals not well, land needs attention, and so on. So one of the key things we did mention earlier on, stress can be related to your personality. And psychologists like to kind of categorize people because that's the way they work and it's fine. It gives them insight. So we thought it'd be interesting to share that, but maybe to look at like before we look at that personality and how stress and what causes stress. And guess what? We're saying yourself, your personality style, your thinking patterns, your belief system, self-esteem and confidence. There we go again. How you look after yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I'll also include spiritually there in that for sure. Um, and we're going to look at that in more detail. Like, so yourself, like, how do you view yourself? You know, I think, like, but I think we've moved on significantly from it as a society. But, you know, like, we might have gone up in school and various, oh, don't be blowing your own trumpet. Like, why not? Like, if you're successful, celebrate it. And, you know, that's part of who you are. And even if you, like, even when we are successful, we're still human and we still have, you know, we still have our challenges. So others, like stress transmitters, when under stress, they let others know how they're feeling, so everyone feels stressed. Ever meet somebody that's stressed and you give them a lot of your time and you say, then you end up feeling stressed and concerned. Stress dumpers, they find someone to pass the stress on to and then feel much better at your expense. Well, in fairness, I could be that person too, passing my stress on to somebody else, like, because we're all human. And then stress carriers, they feel stress, but deny or internalize it. And this is when you need to be cautious. Like you feel, you know you're stressed, you know, you've seen the signs, the concerns, but you know what, you deny it or internalize it because so like I'm fine, I'm grand. The stress stops with them and may sometimes be released by a final straw incident. And we've looked at that, the risks associated, the negative side of stress when we don't look after self-care. But also to remember, stress is part and parcel of life, for sure. And then events that can cause difficulties, events that we've no control over. Like we talked about the influencing factors of finance and that, but now what we're talking about is things in our personal lives as well, and bereavement and loss, and divorce, separation, part and parcel of life as well. Um, you know, people relationships break down and it's about finding new levels, new compassion, new opportunities. You know, maybe house move. I don't think farmers in general move, but sometimes maybe where there are in-laws and other family members, and you know there might be rearrangement of things that can cause stress. But also, let's always be aware it can be managed. Redundancy, like where redundancy maybe for maybe in farming, that might be seeking additional supports and being eligible for supports. And maybe, you know, it's a strong word, redundancy, but sometimes we can feel redundant, and especially maybe, but it shouldn't be the case, I don't think, you know, when a farmer is aging. They might kind of say, oh, I'm redundant. But you know what? A farmer is never redundant. There's always something to be done. And I've seen it here in my own household farming, where my father-in-law, like, almost reached the grand age of 90, but he was always out and about. There was always something to be done, even if it was to pick up a stone in the field. Financial worries we've already addressed. And then major health changes in yourself or someone close. And sometimes that can be a farm accident where a farmer has lost his limb. Um, Sadly, but again, we know there's wonderful support there. But all these things can cause stress, and it's just about being aware of them and to say, what do I need to do? And to look back at the worksheet we've attached with this presentation to identify your stressors. It's personal, it's private to you, and then to have a look at our tips for stress as well. So we're linking this into different types of personality. So you can decide at the end of this presentation, is that me, am I an A or am I B? And does it really matter at the end of the day? So what do we say about the type A personality? Um, so farming, I think in fairness, it can be said, attracts driven, independent people. Like, because you have to be self-starter, you have to be a motivator, you're running your own business. You're being your own professional person. So individuals who take pride in hard work, self-reliance, and getting things done. You recognize yourself in that. On the positive side, these traits, as we've seen in there, hard-driven, ambitious, sense of time, urgency, got to get it done now, finishes other people's sentences. I'm a bit guilty of that personally. Preoccupation with time deadlines. Oh, like, well, then I wouldn't be the best candidate there for that. Don't panic about deadlines. A desire to do increasingly more in less time. Like, I didn't get enough done. Oh, like, I'm out there all day and I've nothing done. Being hard on yourself. Overly competitive in work and social activities. That can lead to kind of feelings of aggression, being hostile and impatient because people might be moving fast enough around you, and domineering and self-confident. Again, there's a place to be self-confident. Domineering, you've got to be able to measure it. So these traits can be an asset in farming because they can fuel innovation, seeking out new methods of working, developing and expanding the farm enterprise. Time can be an important factor to keep moving in order to get things done promptly during harvest, calving. It won't wait, it has to be done. And then if you're worrying, well, is this good weather going to last or not? Ultimately, what you're doing is seeking a better quality and yields, keeping in line with regulations. So that's the positive side of being that person with what they're measuring up as a type A personality. But then, we have to look at the other side. What's on the other side of positivity? If these traits go unchecked, they can have a negative impact, and in actual fact can wear you down. You can exhaust yourself, because you're not making enough time for rest, and that of course can lead to burnout. You might be impatient about how things are being done and responses. It can lead to strained relationships with family, maybe where you have workers on your farm, or indeed the neighbours. However, collectively, these negative traits and overwork can trigger health issues, both physical and mental. So again, we're going back to our machinery analogy. Just like machinery needs downtime and maintenance, so do you. So revving the engine too hard or plowing without taking a pause are not good for practice. I mean, you don't overload your car with fuel because the engine will stop. And just remember that, don't overload yourself, avoid overloading yourself. So the type A traits can help a farm thrive and indeed survive, but it requires balance, or you run the risk, as we say, running yourself into the ground. And we're familiar with that idea, running yourself into the ground, and then you're not fit for purpose, and you feel you're not fit for purpose in your own sense, and sometimes you may not recognize yourself, you're so exhausted. So what does our type B person look like? You're patient, you're calm and content, sets reasonable goals, you take time out for self, you're less competitive, enjoy the fun in taking part in whatever is going on, you're relaxed, you have no need to impress others, comfortable with self, normal energy levels, and easy deadlines. There's an expression in life, keeping up with the Joneses, whoever the Joneses are. Sometimes that can lead to its own pressures. So the traits that we've just identified there, like calmness, contentment, and setting realistic goals, can be a real strength in agriculture. Farmers with this temperament tend to work steadily without burning out, take time to enjoy the process, not just the outcome. It's not about what's the end result, it's about I'm enjoying my farming. More than likely, handle setbacks more calmly, tend to be more appropriate, and will know when to rest and why it matters. And you strive for balance. And again, I go back to my father-in-law. He would often say, why worry about the day you haven't seen? We build up anxiety. And so again, it's kind of having that holistic approach, live for the day. Of course, you have to make decisions, but to minimize how events impact on you. So there are also the negatives associated with the type B, and I'm sure you're seeing them already. Personality traits when it comes to farming, such as you mightn't be pushing for innovation or market expansion. You may settle for good enough, sure, it's grand, I'm doing grand, rather than striving for improvement or efficiency. And it's understandable that the young farmers, and we will have commentary on that as well, coming into the farming business and moving on, they're so keen for innovation, modern technology. And we can be there to support them in that, but also to kind of remind themselves about a quality of life as well. and not to be working all the hours God gives them. Say so. In order to keep a sense of balance between the type A and the type B personalities, it's important to comment. As we have seen, the type A farmer often thrives on precision and ambition, but they can also burn out, stress easily, or struggle with work-life balance. You know, lots of achievements, but sometimes it can be at the cost of their physical and mental health. So the type B farmer, on the other hand, may need nudges, but that's the difference. They may need a nudge to stay proactive and be goal orientated, especially when farming demands quick actions and responses. So really, when you look at both types, like the ideal and most likely the true position that most successful farmers blend both styles, striving for balance. And that's what we're really encouraging, to take the positives from the type B personality for self-care. Um, and we can see a bit of all of us in either one. By way of conclusion, and Marie will comment, like by way of conclusion, when we put all that we've just considered here, our message to you, that the land will wait, but attention to your well-being should not be left to wait. That's our core message to you. Farmers are used to nurturing their land, feeding stock before breakfast even, repairing fences before resting, pursuing regulations and deadlines, respectively, dictated by weather conditions, statutory bodies, and so on. It is equally as important to tend to your mental and physical well-being needs. And that point there, feeding stock, going out, leaving your home before breakfast. My husband will never leave the kitchen without having a breakfast because, one, he thinks it's bad, and I know Anne-Marie will back this up, to head out into the weather conditions in an empty stomach. And of course, as a farmer, you don't know when you get back in again. And again, I'm going to go back to the 9 to 5 analogy, like if you were an analogy. So if you're working in an office, coffee break, 11 o'clock, lunch, 1 o'clock, maybe, you might be fortunate enough to have another coffee break at 3 o'clock. That doesn't happen for farming. So you've got to start your day by looking after yourself and give yourself time for that breakfast. Let it be a boiled egg, let it be a cereal, let it be a cup of coffee or tea, or like whatever it is you like, a piece of fruit, all very accessible in the morning. So what we're saying is, remember, you and your family matter just as much as the work you do because of what you contribute to your community, what you contribute, not just your community, but to our country. Prioritize self-care. The farm will still be there tomorrow. However, you need to keep well to manage it and care for your family. So rest in its own right is important, as is farm maintenance. So over to you, Anne-Marie, to let our participants know what to expect next week and a general comment on what we've just considered.
Thanks a million, Finola. Absolutely fantastic session. The insight and the bringing the self-awareness to the type of person that you might be a type A, I'll go, or type B, a little bit more relaxed, and how stress will show up in the different personalities. I, for one, took a lot of pointers out of that session, and I'm sure it struck a chord with lots of other people, whether you're a farmer, a member of a farm family, or indeed just living in the rural area. Really brilliant session and great insight. So next week we're going to be talking about lifestyle, and that will be more around actually what practices will I put into place to, to relieve some of the stresses that I'm experiencing. It could be around sleep, food, movement, downtime, things that you've mentioned there, but we'll talk about some practical tips. I know there's a self-assessment sheet that will go along with the next session as well, which we will upload just before the release of the second session. For all of those worksheets, they're going to be on the Farmwell Hub, so www.farmwellhub.ie, and you can grab your worksheets from there as well, where there's plenty of other resources. And I think that is a wrap. Thanks again, Finola, and
Lovely.
I hope.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Anne-Marie.